Welcome to Business Model Hackers. Okay, this is a podcast where we unravel the complexities of business strategy and management tools. We've got Sam Schreim with us, a former top-tier management consultant who traded the security of a lucrative career for the dynamic world of entrepreneurship. Now, you should know Sam brings with him a wealth of experience, having advised everyone from Fortune 500 executives to ambitious startups. He's extended his expertise to governments and nonprofits in strategic management roles. So gear up. We're about to dissect it all with a seasoned expert. Let's hack into it. Sam, hello. How are you today?
Good. How are you today, Philip?
Doing good, feeling good. And I know the previous episode we were talking about some really great things and how excited I am for this batch of episodes that are coming up for the listener. And this one is no exception. I'd like to dive into abstractions with you, if that's okay. And my question to open it up is, what is an abstraction, or what is abstraction? And can you share a personal story or moment where you realize the power or importance of abstraction in your work and daily life?
Sure. I mean, actually, abstraction is an abstract concept, but if you grasp it, it's a life-changing concept. It's a systems thinking tool, right? It's used to describe the whole, right, without being a reductionist, but it describes the whole in parts. So it's kind of counterintuitive in a way. It refers to a process of distilling complexity down to a simple representation that captures the most relevant essentials while stripping away unnecessary details that you don't need for that particular context. It kind of involves focusing on the general principle, patterns, concepts, or ideas rather than specific concrete examples or like instances. It's kind of like looking down, okay, on a city, okay, from way up high, let's say in a plane or skyrise, right? Versus like walking around on city streets. From above, you see like the broad, big picture structure, the highways, the neighborhoods, the layout, but you miss all the little details, right? The coffee shops, the cool street art, etc. On the ground, you experience all those granular details and give a city its unique flavor and culture. But it's harder to grasp how it all fit together without this bird's eye view of the city, right? So complex systems are like that too, right? You've got the macro level, kind of like the city blueprint. This shows the large scale organization relationships. Then you have the micro level. This is where all the people interact and activity happens on an individual basis. The macro draws order from the micro, right? I mean, it imposes like coordination on it so that the whole system function harmoniously at a global scale. But the micro works according to its own local rules and adaptation apart from the macro. So you need both views to fully understand the complex system. Pure theory and models only get you so far because each manifestation of that theory on the ground will have its own distinct element. Like, let's say how Boston is different from New York City, which is different from London, right? And so in complex engineering, you need abstraction to make sense of all the components and clarity and clarify the big picture. But if you can't forget the importance of the ethnographic research, because it's the translation from macro to micro that where the rubber meets the road. Right. And this is where things are likely to play out differently than the model predicts. So if you want, let's talk about some key characteristics of, abstraction. Basically, it involves reducing details to focus only on the aspect most important to that particular context you're trying to analyze, right? Or what you're trying to communicate. It's shifting from the very detailed or real world specific representation to like the generalized conceptual models. It enables solving multiple problems and hides away like the implementation complexities behind simplicity of these interfaces. So and the application, by the way, of abstraction are enormous. It's crucial and it's used across several fields. All started in computer science. I think that's the origin of where abstraction started to be used. But I mean, the term abstraction, right? But in engineering, it's been used, for eons, from blueprinting, for example, how you develop a blueprint and then you build from the blueprint, etc. All of these are different level of abstractions. But where it really came to materialize and receive its own kind of, coined the term abstraction is from computer engineering and computer science, where you have the programs are actually abstractions. You have routines, you have individual programs. So you have a program made of individual routines that they call, and each one of those is a different layer of abstraction. So like I said, the applications are from engineering to mathematics to social science. You see abstraction.
Would you be able to explain the concept of an abstraction using a simple analogy or metaphor that maybe our listeners could relate to?
Let's imagine you're looking at a bunch of different smartphones, right? Each phone has its own design, color, and feature. But when you talk about smartphones in general, you don't focus on those specific details, right? Instead, you think about, what makes them all smartphones. They can make calls, they access the internet, they run apps. That's an abstraction. It's like zooming in and out at the big picture and ignoring the small stuff that, you focus on what's really important and what things they have in common. So whether it's a math problem, designing a building, or even a piece of modern art, abstraction helps us kind of grab the big idea without getting bogged down every little detail. It's like when you describe your favorite movie to a friend, right? You don't go from A to Z. You opened the door and he went, you basically just describe you don't talk, you don't recite the entire script. You give the plot, the idea, the main plot, right? Another way to visualize, I think, the process of abstraction is think about it as the blueprint of a house. So in engineering construction, I'm sure you've seen those blueprints, right? So the blueprint is one level of abstraction, and that's important for the engineers who are looking to build a house, right? They don't care about anything else other than that blueprint in order to construct the house. But the actual physical building, when it's there, that's actually for what you care as a resident of that house. You care about that actual physical house. You don't care about the blueprint. I hope that kind of explains different, metaphorically, the example, illustrate what abstraction is about.
Yeah, I mean, maybe while discussing this example abstraction like you just did, we can dive a little deeper into talking about how that helps simplify complexity. What details are you supposed to omit and why are those considered non-essential?
A better way to do that may be to explain it through another metaphor, right? And let's think about, for example, when you're driving a car, if you're driving a vehicle. So what happens when you drive a vehicle? Of course, you got the engine operation, right? You can think about it that way. You got the engine operation, the combustion cycles, fuel injection, you got the transmission and the drivetrain, you got the steering and suspension, you got the braking. Do you really care about that? Probably not, right? As a driver, what you need to understand are not these intricate details of the system. You need to understand, you press the gas, right? That's abstraction of the engine control. Pressing gas is actually the engine pushing, driving the car. Gas goes into the engine, pushes the car forward. You don't need to understand that part, but you understand that pressing the gas gets the car moving. That's an abstraction, right? You turn the steering wheel, that's abstraction of the steering and suspension interaction. The fact that you're steering and turns the car, right? When you step on the brakes, it stops the car. You don't need to, abstraction of the braking system. The braking system is a complex system. So that's kind of like, if you want to deep dive into it. So what if you think about it, what details did we omit by looking at that way, right? I mean, you didn't look at the chemical reactions that happens, when the combustion engine is sparked and then the fire happens and all these pistons start moving. You don't need to know that as a driver, right? You don't need to understand the gear ratios, all that kind of stuff. So why are these details non-essential to the driver? Most drivers, they need to go from point A to point B, right? What are they focusing on? They don't need to understand, I press the gas, this is what happens. Automatically, it's a level of abstraction. The fact that you're driving a car without thinking about all these things, you're thinking about what you do, and it's even intuitive in a sense, right? Does that kind of explain it more?
Could you tell us about a time when abstraction led you to a surprising or unexpected insight in your own field?
I think, I mentioned that, but abstraction changed my life, really. I mean, as a management consultant or a career consultant, when I first started consulting, everything we used to do is about structure, right? Structuring decks, structuring problems, structuring presentations. So, for example, let me give you an example. As consultants, you work a lot with experts or even with the client, right? So you go to the client, you want to understand the problem, you conduct interviews. If you don't master the art of abstraction, you could get lost in all the details, like the car, the engine, and all that kind of stuff. So you go talk to the expert, they're not going to tell you about their problem. They're not going to tell you about the problem you're looking for or the context you're looking for. If you don't master the art of abstraction and structure, right? these different things and kind of extrapolate the context that you need and simplify things in order to solve the problem, you're never going to find a solution to what you're trying to do. And for me, when I read the concept of abstraction, it was an aha moment, right? I'm like, wow, because if you really master it, you can apply it everywhere in life, everywhere. It's whether you're a business person or a personal level. To me, it was a major revelation because we do lots of framework development. So you build a framework to simplify the problem, right? I wrote a book on the storytelling with charts, and I bring in the abstraction concept. I discuss that in details because it helps people structure their storyline. Storytelling in of itself, if you don't master the art of abstraction and you don't know how to structure it, you can't put a story and that flows smoothly. Even Hollywood movies, they're built of these components that they're the story that make up the story. They're an abstraction. They're built based on, the people that master abstraction to some degree of storytelling. So you can use it heuristically and in detail, right? It's not just heuristically. I mean, it's so powerful that if you want to use it in detail and develop, like I told you, framework, etc., and solutions to problem, or you can use it, as mental shortcuts. So it really can help in solving complex problems.
Now, how do you see the idea or the practice of abstraction influencing the development of the new technologies or innovations today?
Yeah, I mean, we've explored abstraction and how it plays a role in simplifying complexities, right? I think the influence of abstraction can extend far beyond, these things that we just discussed. For example, the most obvious one is complexity for design and development, right? That this is like the engineering stuff, etc. But let's look at, for example, now in unlocking the potential of artificial intelligence, right? At the heart of AI lies the fundamental principle of converting complex data into actionable insights, right? I mean, that's how LLM works, by identifying pattern and relationships, etc. Also in the language of the digital world. So I think at no time ever was abstraction more important than it is today. Right, you can see it as not just a mental shortcut, right? It's a powerful tool. It can fuel innovation by simplifying these complexities. That our world is getting even more and more complex. It enables kind of collaboration by and by unlocking the potential of data that is convoluted these days. If you have this data abstracted into different layers, then you can actually pick the data that matters, right?
Yeah. Now, would you be able to break down a complex idea, just as an example, in your field using some kind of analogy or story that illustrates the process of abstraction?
Sure. I mean, imagine you're in a Library of Congress, right? Your shelves overflowing with books, countless languages. The library is a vast sea of information and knowledge. But simply having all access to all that information is not enough, right? I mean, how can you really utilize this? And to truly be able to utilize this library of information, okay, we need a powerful tool. And that tool is abstraction. And, introducing GPT, right? The master librarian, if you want. Yeah, her task is to navigate the library and make sense of all this contents, right? So instead of getting lost in all the data of every individual book, employs abstraction. She categorizes books by genre, author, or language, and creates a mental map of the library's organization. This allows her to quickly find the information she needs without getting overwhelmed by the sheer volume of text. So that's, in a way, exactly how large language models work, right? They use abstraction in the process to respond to you and to provide you with the data you need and to identify the pattern and relationships and key concept within the data. So it's the essence of everything AI today.
If you could abstract one mundane task from your daily routine, making it simpler or automatic, what would it be and why?
Well, there is one task that I think I would benefit greatly from abstraction, right? And that is decision fatigue, right? I mean, our days are full of decision making. I mean, entrepreneurs, business leaders, almost everybody's days is constantly faced with a barrage of decision making, from big strategic choices to small operational details, right? This constant decision making can be like really mentally draining. I don't know about you, but at the end of the day, I am like so tired, right, from all these decisions that I need to make. So the idea is I would want to abstract away the less critical decisions to free up my mind to focus on the most important things. And that's something that I practice, religiously on a daily basis. I apply the 80-20 rule, but before I'm able to apply the 80-20 rule, you need to use the concept of abstraction, right? Because the abstraction helps you identify that 20%. You know what I mean? Like, this is automating routine tasks, building a strong team, setting clear guidelines and frameworks, leveraging data and analytics, all these things, right? I think by abstracting away the less critical decisions, you could ultimately maintain a sharper focus on strategic priorities, and you can improve your decision making, right? Because you reduce your cognitive overload. Like, by the end of the day, you're still sharp, as opposed to like being drained, at the beginning of the day. You can boost your productivity and efficiency, free up more time to spend with your family. You can also empower your team to foster a culture of ownership. So this wouldn't mean becoming completely removed from decision making, right? As the entrepreneur, I would still be responsible for setting the overall directions, etc. But I think abstracting away the less important tasks would ensure that my mental energy is preserved and directed towards where I need it most.
How can entrepreneurs and business leaders use abstraction in their business operations and management day to day?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to what I just mentioned as an entrepreneur, I think. But there are other things, for example, as management tools. Just think of, let's take, for example, organization. Organization is made up of what we call organizational hardware and organizational software, right? The organizational hardware being, the boxes and the people in the boxes and the line reporting structure. But organizational software is all the processes and how individuals interact, right? So by abstracting them to that level, you can then understand, and so you could look at organization structure as one aspect when you're considering, people, reporting relationships, promotions, etc. And you could look at the processes that are in place to see if everybody's working and being optimized. That's just a simple example of how, leaders can use it, let's say in a more formal manner. It can help you in simplifying processes. You can strip process complexity to the basic essential steps. So you can have, for example, process, sub-process, sub-process, into micro sub-process. But you can actually analyze them at all these different levels. You can create frameworks and models, right? I mean, these conceptual models, they're super important, not only for analyzing stuff, but also for describing and explaining stuff and understanding stuff, right? You can establish principles. I love that one because you can crystallize the knowledge into like general guidelines and best practices. That kind of helps steer the behavior and choices that provide autonomy in execution, right? And that also, reporting, performance management, reporting, rewards, all these metrics that you have, the KPIs, they're also abstractions. You have them at different levels. There are numerous and countless ways managers can utilize this. And I think we just scratched the surface in this episode. But I hope, we brought you to the level where you understand this better and you start maybe applying it better.
Yeah, it's definitely clearer than it was when we started the conversation. And so just for the sake of abstraction, could we summarize the importance of abstraction in 3 key concepts, just so that our listeners can take that away with them today?
Good one. Yes. Let's abstract away what this is about. I mean, abstraction, as I mentioned earlier, is a systems thinking tool, right? I mean, it's both a heuristic and a really important management tool, right? So you could use it for, not just as a mental shortcut, but you could actually use it as a tool, in establishing a framework, etc. And structure, I think structuring is one of the key aspects that you can take away by learning abstraction. And to learn abstraction, you need to practice it. I had to learn it in my profession because I practice it on a daily basis. But when I understood the concept itself, it kind of made my life easier. I was much faster at structuring things. And when you structure things, you can actually be more productive at everything you structure in your life. It takes practice, right? It's important you practice. One way to practice this is, I think, mind mapping, is a good way because mind mapping is kind of layers. You have something in the middle, and that spawns out to different levels. So you have layer 1, and then you have layer 2, etc. And each one of those is a level of abstraction. You can use it in problem framing, right? You can use it in the issue diagram, as I mentioned, in the storytelling with charts when you're developing charts or a story, right? Or when you're telling, or even when you're communicating. So I think those are the key takeaway from the session that I hope are really useful.
Well, with that wraps it up for us today. Again, thank you for listening, Business Model Hackers. We truly appreciate you joining us for these discussions. But remember that we go far deeper into these concepts with actual resources you can take with you if you're subscribed. So if you haven't done so, go to businessmodelhackers.com and get access to these things that we're putting out. And if possible, please join us on the social media channels and help us get more people involved to continue to create the impact that you know Business Model Hackers are doing. As always, we appreciate you and can't thank you enough. See you at the next one.